Witness the fight the boxing world has been waiting for on Netflix. Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford face off for the first time in their legendary careers for the Super Middleweight Championship in Las Vegas. The winner will walk away the greatest of their era. Watch Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford Saturday, September 13th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Live only on Netflix.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
You're listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hello dear listeners, the international break is over so soon into the season. These international breaks are interminable when they come along, aren't they, dear listeners? But we do come back with a cracker of a fixture, the away leg of the South East London derby, Charlton Athletic versus Millwall on Saturday. I'm just looking at the fantastic 11v11.com, put my teeth back in, website, which lists fixtures from the formation of the Football League, sometimes occasionally older ones, cup games, but mostly it's Football League fixtures since 1921. And this is the Charlton versus Millwall record. And famously, this is, I don't know if it's the most one-sided local derby in world football. It's got to be amongst the more remarkable ones, really, given the levels that Charlton and Mill have played at over the years. Charlton are not long a Premier League side, so maybe they wouldn't have played us then, but nevertheless, we've played each other quite a few times over the years, and for it to be just 12 victories since both clubs would have entered the Football League in 1921, 12 wins for Charlton in that time, 27 draws, 37 wins for Millwall since 1921. That's quite an incredible, hit rate, in my opinion. I don't know why that should be. Why? What's your speculation, dear listeners, as to why it is so one-sided? Now, I know we can all get into the kind of tribal loyalty thing that somehow Millwall, are in some superior, level. I think if we're going to speak honestly, then for many, many years, Millwall and Charlton have played on a par in terms of league positions and resources available. Obviously, they've had better times in recent decades, not so much lately. But it's still a strange one, in my opinion. Never quite worked out the hows and whys of why it's such a one-sided local derby. But there we are. We're going to enjoy it while we can. Now, this is one of our retrospective looks back to fixtures in the past. Quite a few Millwall wins to choose from, but we are at the Valley on Saturday. So I've chosen one from way back, 1926, 13th of February 1926. Charlton 1, Charlton Athletic 1, Millwall 4. Played in the 3rd Division South in front of 18,984 fans at the Valley. This was a season where we would finish 3rd in the 3rd Division South under the very famous management of Bob Hunter. And this is one of those 37 victories that we've had over the years playing our near neighbours. Are they rivals, listeners? Do you think of them as rivals? I've always had a funny kind of relationship with Charlton because of being brought up in South East London. They were actually the closest club to where I was living, was brought up, certainly in Mottingham. It was just a bus ride away for us to get to Charlton. Obviously, I fell in love with Millwall, and I'm eternally glad that I did. But back in the 70s, and I think prior to the 70s, it wasn't quite such a tribal game in many respects. You would wasn't so easy to go away. Certainly not as a kid. You know, the money required and the planning of it and the whole how do you do it kind of thing it wasn't so easy back then. So for most of us football fans, and I've called myself a football fan when I first started going in the early 70s, you would often alternate between one club and another. Quite a few blokes on our estate would go to Charlton, for example, one week, or maybe follow Arsenal. The guy opposite us, the guy called John, he had a red and white scarf, and I never quite knew whether that determined which teams he would follow in London, but he would trudge off to watch Charlton one week, third, second division football. And then on the odd week, the other week, Arsenal will be at home. They used to alternate fixtures. I think they still do to some level. Like it's become much more mixed up now with the TV impact. But back then, on a fortnightly basis, you'd go, um, you know, Arsenal one week, Charlton the next. I knew blokes that I went to school with that would follow Chelsea one week, blue and white, and Millwall, blue and white. And so, wasn't a strict rule, but people would just go and watch some football, would go to an alternative club when their team were away. I used to go watch Charlton, I will confess to you on this show, mostly because Mill would be away. You'd want to hear how they got on, but that back in those information starved times, you had to wait till you got home from from the game to get the late edition of the Evening Standard. Rarely were you home in time to catch the radio results. So it was very different. There's no way of following what was going on. It wasn't easy. And if you followed football, you'd want to go and see a game every week. And the only way you could do that would be to um, have your team. In my case, that was Millwall. But you had Charlton just a bus ride away. So particularly in the early 70s, I'd often alternate between Millwall and Charlton. That faded away as time wore along in the late 70s and 80s onwards. It became more and more the fashion to get tickets, and that's when you couldn't casually go along to watch somebody else. Go occasionally to places like Crystal Palace, well, that was a bit more of a complex route to get over there. But the easy route was Charlton, so I'd often find myself there when the Lions are away. Anyway, a little bit of personal history. We're going to go back to this fixture, 4-1 win for Millwall at the Valley. Played 13th of February 1926, not far short of 99 years ago, nearly 100 years since. It's quite a strange thing, isn't it? A hat trick for Alf Moule, Moule, 3 goals for Alf Moule, and 1 for Sydney Gore. As I say, this is played in the 3rd Division South under the management of Bob Hunter. Now, Neil and I have done a show on Bob Hunter. We actually had an appeal for a plaque to be put up on the wall, which is on the West Stand, in amongst the Owl Wall. The tributes to people who've passed away, fans over the years. And I'm really pleased to have got one into tribute, as an honour for the great Bob Hunter, who was a trainer with us on the Isle of Dogs, and managed Mill's longest serving manager. I think he was in charge for some 13 odd years, and he actually passed away in office as Mill manager in the 30s. A great manager and producer of a great side in the late 1920s. There'll be a season or two after this particular fixture, but some of the names will be familiar as part of the great championship winning side of 1927-28 under Bob's management. I do have a match report for you for this 4-1 win. It's from a weekly newspaper, must be like a Sunday paper, Reynolds Illustrated News, and this is dated Sunday the 14th, Valentine's Day, 1926. Speed and thrust, how Millwall overcame Charlton at the Valley, says their correspondent, who goes by the nom de plume of Southerner. Charlton Athletic 4, Millwall 1. The meeting of local rivals on the Surrey side of the Thames at the Valley, Surrey, yesterday afternoon produced a game that was stubbornly contested and cleanly played, says Southerner. What is more to the point, however, the play itself was certainly good, despite blemishes in both teams. The method adopted was the long passing and open game in which speed predominated. It was because Mill's forwards were faster and more thrustful. Thrustful, that sounds like a good name for a blue movie, doesn't it? Thrustful in the goal area that they deservedly won. although the actual margin of goals would probably convey a wrong impression to Charlton's detriment. Obviously, the skillful play of the halves, the midfielders in modern terms, on both sides was the factor, and that controlled the scheme of things that mattered, for the Charlton forwards had many opportunities to score, and it was just that lack of precision that would make all the difference. It was further made all the more apparent because the Millwall backs were very shaky. Nothing changes, does it, listeners? And at close quarters, the manner in which they attempted to meet the Charlton forwards' attacking sorties must have caused the Lions supporters no small measure of anxiety. Nothing is new, Southerner. Nothing is new, mate. Mill's policy in focusing on attack was the correct procedure, and it was in this direction that the forwards proved so valuable. Poor shooting, headlines then. One feature of the play of the Charlton forwards was their prowess at first-time passes, and in the first-time movements, they tried to so cleverly execute. If only more accuracy had been devoted to their shooting, says Southerner, and that's the report. Looks like it's been cut off early by a sub-editor there. So there we are. That's from Reynolds Illustrated News. Picture of Alf Gom there as well, which I might stick on the X post when I put this out. Few names I've picked out there. We've mentioned obviously Bob Hunter a few times on our shows over the years. I just mentioned him a moment ago. So I picked out a few other names from the Mill team. Let's run through the team actually before I go into the names that I've picked out. We've got in goal Joe Lansdale. Wonderful name here. Horace, nicknamed Big Ben Telling. Big Ben Telling, that was his playing name. Richard Hill, Alf Amos, Bill Bryant. Len Graham, I'm sure we've mentioned with Neil, who one of our twice capped players, along with J.R. Smith for England. Jules Chance, Alf Moole, who scored the hat-trick. Richard Parker, who would be one of the highest scoring forwards in Mill history. Andy Abraham, I think a playing name again, Abraham Lincoln. And Sidney Gore, no substitutes, kids, not in those far-off times. That was the Mill starting 11, some fantastic names there. So I've picked out Richard Parker. I'm sure we've mentioned Richard Parker. If we have, I make no apology actually for repeating. He's one of the great names of Mill history. Played as an inside forward from 1924 to 1928. 107 games for the Lions. 74 goals from 107 games. That's not far short of a goal a game. Born in Stockton-on-Tees, up in near Middlesbrough. In 1894, he passed away Stockton-on-Tees in 1969. A career that took him places like Norton United, guessing these are northern sides near where he was born, Thornaby Corinthians, Stockton, Sunderland in June 1919, Coventry 1920, South Shields 1920, Wallsend 1921, QPR in July 1922, then Millwall July 1924. Watford he moved on to in 1927, and he retired in the close season of 1928. He made his debut versus Bristol City in 1924. The biography, this is from Neil Fissler's book, The Mill A to Z, well worth the investment. I believe he's updating it if he hasn't done it already. Mill Players A to Z. So this is the biography of Dick Parker, Richard Parker. He was the Army's lightweight boxing champion and spotted while serving in France in the Great War with the Northumberland Fusiliers, going straight into Sunderland's First Division side. How about that, listeners? Can you imagine modern-day players serving in, I don't know where, Ukraine, some war zone, being signed straight from the forces straight into Premier League side? That was the equivalent then. Northumberland Fusiliers, having served in France, into the Sunderland's First Division, so a big team back then, Sunderland, dear listeners. A consistent and dangerous opponent, says Neil, who moved clubs regularly before he arrived at the Den. He still holds the club's season scoring record of 37 league goals in 1927. I think Teddy's 38 was scored in cup competition, so 37 football league goals in 1927 for Richard Parker. However, relationships with the club's directors were not cordial. Story of our lives, chaps, isn't it? And he left early in the third division, Division 3 South title-winning campaign later that year. It proved to be his last in professional football. That's poignant. When he retired to become a storekeeper and then a builder's labourer in Redcar. A storekeeper and then a builder's labourer after a glittering career playing the game and service with the army in France in the Great War. There we are. That was football back then, working class game, and a little quarter was given or expected, I think, in terms of treatment and post-career being looked after. Once you were gone, you were gone. So there we are. Richard Parker, give me his full name, 1894, 1969. One of the Mill's greats, actually, played in this game, although he didn't score. Now, I've picked out a couple of other lesser-known names just because I like to pick out lesser-known names, listeners. It's one of my foibles, one of my little habits. So I picked out the name Tilling. I haven't come across Tilling. Big Ben. This is Big Ben Tilling. I think I said Telling earlier. It was Tilling. Horace William Tilling played as a fullback, played 64 games and scored once for us between 1922 and 1928. He was born in New Cross, local boy, 3rd of August 1896. Passed away in Hemel Hempstead in 1955. His career took in the lifeguards. This is another thing. I mean, this era fascinates me. Professional footballers coming to the game, a game of entertainment, from horrendous things like the First World War. So his career took in the lifeguards. Played for a team Mid-Rhondda, Welsh team, Windsor and Eton, 1922, and Millwall 1922, then Northampton 1928. An Army International, Horace, who was said to have a kick like a mule, says Neil, and he hailed from New Cross, worked as an indexer. What's an indexer? Anyone know out there, listeners? Do put me straight as to what an indexer is. He scored a penalty in his first home game against Portsmouth, but had to wait until January 1926 to dislodge Jack Fault, another big name in Mill history there, Jack Fault. But despite a couple of long runs in the side, the long-serving Fault always returned, pushing out Big Ben Tilling. Big Ben, as he was known, settled in Hemel Hempstead and was an engineer at the Ovaltine factory in Apsley, as he passed away from a heart attack, aged 59 in 1955. His son Maurice Tilling also played for Mill later in the 50s, I think. There we are. I'd love to know where the name Big Ben came from. Doesn't give us a clue there. That'd be a subject of some other research. Horace William Tilling, known as Big Ben Tilling. Rest in peace. And then finally, another name. I didn't know that. I mean, I've seen the name, but I didn't know George Chance at all. George Harry Chance, an outside right, so a winger. 1925 to 1930, played for the Lions. 212 games, 33 goals. Born in a place called Coppice-Mears, don't know where that is, in 1896, and he passed away in Quarry Bank, 1952. I think these must be Midlands locations. His career took in Cradley Heath, Stourbridge, Brearley Hall Alliance, Bristol Rovers in 1920, then Gillingham 1924. Millwall for £500. There's a signing fee, kids. 500 quid signed for us in 1925. Then he moved back to Brearley Hall Alliance 1930. Debuted against Crystal Palace in a 2-1 win in 1925. George Chance was to many of his opponents an elusive outside right who possessed great speed, says the A to Z book. And he was at his best when the ground was hard. It allowed him to cut in and shoot at either goal or to play into a teammate. He was never present in the Mill side that took the 3rd Division South title in 1926, scoring 6 goals, and was an FA Challenge Cup winner 2 seasons later. London FA Challenge Cup, not the FA Cup. His great pal at the club was Archie Gom, who would go off sea fishing with him. George later in life became a licensee and was mine host at Thorns Inn at Quarry Bank. Don't know where Quarry Bank is. I'm going to guess it's somewhere in the Midlands, but do let me know if it's not, dear listeners. So there we are. George Chance, Horace Big Ben Tilling, and Richard Parker. 3 fantastic names from the past there, dear listeners.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contracts. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there's one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at friskies.com or visit your local store.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Now then, the game will be played at the Valley on Saturday, as we all know. I thought it might just be interesting, just because it was nearer to me as a kid than any other football stadium, to just look at the history of the Valley, which is interesting if you like this kind of thing. I do, listeners. I love all this kind of stuff. So, if it's not your scene, then I suppose turn the podcast off here. Valley has been the home of Charlton Charlton Athletic since 1919, on and off. I've had a couple of periods of exile away from it over the years, but it began as a venue in 1919. Obviously, most recently they were playing at Crystal Palace, weren't they? In the 80s, 85 to 92, great 3-0 win over Charlton at Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. But also, strangely, a little period in 1923-24, they played in Catford at Mountsfield Park. The name of the ground there was the Mounts. Now, I don't know that area. I know to drive through. I know where Catford is, and I know the basic layout of Catford, but I don't know it particularly well. Mountsfield Park, I've been past it, but I don't know what's in it. I've never been in there. Now, whether there's any trace of the stadium there, I don't know. I don't think there is. Do let me know if you've seen any trace of the Mounts Stadium, Mountsfield Park, which I think is that off a Stansted Road, dear listeners. Anyway, do let me know if I'm talking absolute tosh. But it began, the Valley, back to the Valley, began as, it was created from a chalk pit. There's a great map here on the Wikipedia website showing Floyd Road with that kind of dogleg layout that it has. And then beyond it, where the football ground now is what they call old abandoned chalk pits. So it's chalk pit country that was basically put together in post-First World War. They played at various locations around Plumstead and Charlton on formation in 1905, and then sort of the chairman found this abandoned sand and chalk pits. It's sand, not band, silly boy. Supporters basically dug out the flat area for a pitch, and used the earth banked up to create embankments. There was no terracing initially. Its first game there was just simply the pitch roped off with the crowd standing on the earthworks that they'd literally dug out themselves. So the fixture we've just looked at, played in 1926, was only 7 years after this creation would have happened at Charlton. And in fact, just 2 years after Charlton played at the Mount Stadium in Catford. That was a proposed merger of a team called Catford Southend, which didn't happen, and they went back to the Valley afterwards. Big stadium, the old Valley was. When I started going there reasonably regularly in the early 70s, it was crumbling. Basically, it was a huge side terrace, massive terrace. You could stand right at the very top and imagine yourself at some continental stadium, is what I used to do. Stand at the back of it, look down on the pitch. There's one covered end. I think it's still known as a covered end to this day, that the home end, and the away end was just open terracing. Then there was one strange standalone stand of seats, which is famously where the Who had their stage when they played the loudest rock concert ever. Interesting reading the Wikipedia history. I didn't know that there was a move in 1967 by Hackney Speedway to form a speedway track around the side of the Charlton pitch and ride speedway there. That never happened. Turned down on the grounds of noise, apparently, although it didn't stop the Who playing the loudest gig of all time there in the early 70s, isn't it? And then the period away, the ground was in a state. I mean, it was falling to pieces, crumbling concrete. And had to move to Crystal Palace, which was a very soulless, ground always is, isn't it, Crystal Palace? Eventually they came back and have gradually rebuilt the stadium over the years to what it is now, much more modern stadium. Probably the only bit that has any kind of history is the away end, where we'll be, with its pillar. The rest of it's been rebuilt since the return to the better times at Crystal Palace. There we are, strange ground. It never had the atmosphere that the Den had, and yet would have expected it to have had, because it was larger size. Maybe it just isn't in the DNA of the club to have a big atmosphere there. Never seemed to. We'll see what we get when we go there Saturday. Record attendance at the Valley was in 1938, 75,000, which does give you some idea of the scale of the old place as it was. There we are, dear listeners. Hope you've enjoyed this little look ahead or look into the past ahead of Saturday's fixture. Let's hope for a good result for the Lions. We normally do get a good result, though I am very wary of the record 12 wins for Charlton ever. It's got to end sometime, hasn't it? But let's go like the cliches. One more breath, that's all you want. One more time where they don't break it. There we are. Fingers crossed for Saturday. Thank you for listening to these shows. Just do let me know if you enjoy them, if you want me to continue with them, or if they bore you to tears. Do let me know that. I can take it. I'm a big boy. So anyway, till the next edition of Achtung Millwall's Retrospective series. Sounds like an art film, doesn't it? From me, Nick Hart. It's Arrivederci Millwall, and bye for now. I want to give a shout out to our friends John Kelly and Will Scott over at News at Den. Many of you will know that News at Den is the go-to site for everything Millwall. It's part of the Southwark News, the only newspaper with a dedicated Millwall reporter who follows the Lions all over the country. What you may not know is that Southwark News is an independent small business with no investors, no big media company, nor multi-millionaire owners. It's a rare breed, a local paper for local people. And John and Will get the Millwall stories that no one else can. A lot of their stuff is free to read, but the in-depth pieces are for subscribers only. It's just £3 a month or £30 a year, and we think it's a proper bargain. By paying, you're supporting local journalism done the right way. You can sign up by visiting southwarknews.co.uk and clicking on the News at Den section. southwarknews.co.uk, click on News at Den Plus.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.